Hello folks, welcome to the National EMS Academy's online EMT course on the nervous system. In this lesson we're going to cover the pertinent anatomy and functions of this very important body system. Let's get started. First we'll do a quick overview of the functions of the nervous system, or what have you done for me lately kind of thing. Now these are very broad descriptions. To get into the thousands of specific tasks our central and peripheral nervous systems collectively perform would take days, and we just don't have time for that. First, our nervous system provides us with an awareness of our surroundings, what most of us refer to as consciousness. This is a state in which we can interpret what's going on around us and then respond to it appropriately. Next, our nervous system controls what are known as the autonomic body functions. These are the little mundane tasks that just sort of happen without our input. You know, stuff like digesting food, pumping blood, breathing, that kind of thing. Our nervous system controls all of the voluntary and involuntary muscles. The voluntary muscles are those that we have direct control over. They allow us to walk, wave, apply a splint, do other conscious tasks. The involuntary muscles are the ones that take care of those autonomic things that I mentioned just a while back. Finally, nerves throughout our body transmit information about our environment to our central nervous system. This is called sensory information. It includes everything from sight and sounds to the outside temperature. Our brain will interpret this information and we then react to it as necessary. We divide the nervous system into two general parts: the central nervous system, or CNS, and the peripheral nervous system, or PNS. Let's look at the CNS first. It is composed of the brain and spinal cord. This illustration shows the brain and the very uppermost part of the spinal cord. Here, I'll label it for you. Now there are three main parts of the brain I need you to know, and here's what they are. First, the brainstem. The brainstem controls vital functions like breathing and acts as a communication path to the upper areas of the brain. So signals leaving the brain must go through the brainstem, and those coming in from the outside also go through it. The cerebellum is here. Its job is to help us with muscular coordination, balance, and stuff like that. Some patients with cerebellar injuries may have difficulty standing or walking, those kind of functions. Finally, there's the largest part of the brain, the cerebrum. Up here, we control all of our voluntary functions, things like muscle movement and speech. This area is also important in sensory signal interpretation. For example, the vision centers are located here in the very back of the brain. Now, considering how important our central nervous system is, that means we need a pretty robust system to protect it. This system is composed of bones and three layers of specialized tissue called the meninges. This illustration is going to provide us with a look at all these layers. Now this is actually a cutaway illustration of the head, but the spinal column would be constructed very similarly. The difference being that the bony part would be the spinal column instead of the skull. Now let me label this stuff for you. These outermost layers represent the skin and the subcutaneous covering. In this case, it would be the scalp. Under that, we find the bone that encases the CNS. In this case, the skull. Beneath that are the three layers of meninges, and they are in order of outermost to innermost. The dura mater. This is a very tough protective layer. Under that, we have the arachnoid membrane, so named because it looks like a spider's web. The innermost layer is the pia mater. which actually adheres directly to the brain, which is here. Now, one final thing. Between the arachnoid and the pia is a fluid layer. This is called cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF for short. It acts as a cushion or a shock absorber for the brain and the spinal cord. A pretty severe assessment finding we sometimes see is CSF leaking from the ears or the site of a head injury. This would indicate that you have an open injury, and that's never a good thing. Now let's discuss the peripheral nervous system, or the PNS. It contains all of the nervous tissue outside of the brain and spinal cord, kind of like this illustration here shows. Now, nerve cells, which are called neurons, are one-way streets. They look something like this. And the nervous system signals they carry go in one direction, like this. So this neuron would carry signals this direction, and this other one I'm going to draw would carry its signals the opposite way. We have names for these. The neurons that carry impulses toward the CNS are referred to as afferent neurons. We generally use the more common name, sensory. The other ones carry impulses away from the CNS. Their official name is efferent neurons, but you'll hear most people refer to them as motor neurons because they carry instructions to the muscles. I bring this up because you'll learn in patient assessment that we have to evaluate both directions. So we check to see if our patients can move, motor function, and can they feel, which means the sensory paths are working. Paralysis is a term that refers to a lack of motor function. The patient can't move. Numbness, on the other hand, describes sensory loss. Patients can have either one of these or both. Now, I've described one way to divide the nervous system, central and peripheral. Now I'm going to talk about another way, voluntary and involuntary. Voluntary is pretty straightforward. It's all the stuff in your control. For example, your ability to walk, your ability to talk, your ability to wave at the pretty girl down the street. Those are all voluntary functions. Involuntary, though, describes those functions that our central nervous system manages without our conscious input. The actual term most often used is autonomic functions. We also call this the autonomic nervous system, or the ANS. And it has two divisions. Those divisions are the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. I talk a little about the sympathetic nervous system in the endocrine system lesson, but we'll go into it a little more in depth here. First, to orient you to my illustration, I'll represent the parasympathetic on the left side and the sympathetic on the right. Notice that both touch all of the same organs, but what you're going to find is that they cause the opposite reactions. Here's what I mean. Let's do the sympathetic first. The sympathetic response is often called the fight or flight response. It describes how our bodies respond to stresses or threats. Anything from a large scary dog to a heart attack. When activated, this branch of the ANS turns some organs off, some on, and some it supercharges. Let me show you on the diagram here. Now, I'm not going to cover everything, but here's the important parts. The airways dilate. This allows more oxygen to enter the body. The heart beats faster and more forcefully. This allows blood to be pumped to all the vital organs. On the other hand, the stomach and the intestines shut down. No need to waste energy digesting food. There's a threat to be handled. The parasympathetic nervous system, on the other hand, is just the opposite. It's in charge when things are cool and we're just kind of coasting along. You'll see its effects are exactly the opposite of the sympathetic. The airways return to their normal state. There's no need for all that airflow. The heart rate and strength decrease because all we need to do now is meet the body's basic needs. The guts go to work. They digest the food, they deliver nutrients to the body's cells. If this looks like some kind of a balancing act, well, that's exactly what it is. When one takes over, the other goes on standby, and when situations change, they reverse roles. Lastly, let's talk a little more about consciousness. This is an extremely important state to assess when you're managing your patients. Suffice it to say that when a person is unconscious, there's something bad wrong. Loss of consciousness is considered a very serious sign. Decreases in level of consciousness means that much of the brain is failing to operate normally. Now that may be due to a problem with the brain itself, like a head injury, or it could be due to another body system that's not doing its job. For example, if the respiratory system can't deliver enough oxygen to the bloodstream, the brain suffers because it needs a constant supply of oxygen to operate. Your book states that to be conscious you need one working hemisphere and a functioning reticular activating system. Well, these are the hemispheres. Remember, you only need one. And the RAS is a group of nerves located down here in the brainstem. So that means we could lose function of all of these areas and still be conscious. That's a lot of non-operational brain. But you probably know somebody that routinely fails to use most of their brain. I know I do. Anyway, the point here is that unconsciousness should be viewed as a very serious sign and indicates that most of the brain has gone offline. Well, that's it for this lesson, folks. We've looked at the function of the nervous system along with its primary parts and divisions. See you down the road in another class.